I was 3 states away, closing the biggest construction deal of my career, when my phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor Marcus. "Check your backyard camera now." My blood turned to ice as I watched the live feed. My 8-year-old daughter Emma was tied to our oak tree, honey dripping down her face and arms. My father-in-law Frank stood beside her with a jar, grinning. "Let's see how long until the ants come," he shouted. Emma was screaming, already covered in red welts from bites. The conference room in Chicago fell silent as I stared at my phone screen in absolute horror. The security camera feed showed my worst nightmare unfolding in real time. Emma's tiny wrists were bound with rope behind the massive oak tree in our backyard, her pink summer dress stained with golden honey that dripped steadily onto the grass below. But what made my stomach drop wasn't just seeing my daughter in distress. It was watching my wife Sarah calmly unfold a blue-striped lawn chair just 10 feet away from Emma's suffering. "This is too much fun to watch her like that," Sarah called out to Frank, clapping her hands together like she was at some twisted sporting event. My fingers trembled as I tried to process what I was seeing. This was the woman I had married 2 years ago, the woman who promised to love Emma like her own daughter after Emma's biological mother died in that car accident. I fumbled to unmute the audio feed and immediately wished I hadn't. Emma's voice cracked with terror as she begged, "Please, Grandpa Frank, I didn't mean to break your vase. I'm sorry, the ants are biting me." Her words dissolved into heart-wrenching sobs that echoed through my phone speaker. Several colleagues at the construction meeting turned toward me with concerned expressions, but I barely noticed them. My entire world had shrunk to that 4-inch screen showing my daughter's torture. Frank, a bulky man in his 60s with graying hair and hands like tree trunks, stood examining Emma's distress with scientific curiosity. "Consequences teach character, little girl," he announced to the growing crowd. "Your daddy isn't here to protect you now, so you'll learn respect the hard way." He twisted open another jar of honey and began drizzling it deliberately over Emma's legs while she thrashed helplessly against her restraints. What shocked me beyond comprehension was the audience. 12 family members had gathered in my backyard like spectators at a gladiator fight. Sarah's mother, Janet, sat in a folding chair beside my wife, both of them pointing and laughing. Frank's brother Dave, who worked as a sheriff's deputy, stood with his arms crossed, nodding approval. Sarah's cousins, Mark and Lisa, had their phones out, apparently recording Emma's agony for posterity. But the detail that shattered my remaining faith in humanity was the betting. I watched in disbelief as Frank's nephew Tyler collected crumpled bills from the adults. $20 says she lasts 15 minutes before passing out, called Sarah's Uncle Bob. "I've got 30 on 10 minutes max," countered Frank's sister Carol, adjusting her sunglasses like she was at the racetrack. The red welts covering Emma's exposed skin told me this had been going on for far too long already. Fire ants were notorious in our Alabama neighborhood, and I could see dozens of them crawling across Emma's honey-covered arms and face. Her allergic reaction was beginning to show itself through the swelling around her eyes and the rasping quality of her breathing. I tried calling home immediately, but nobody answered. The phone rang endlessly while I watched Sarah glance at it dismissively before returning her attention to Emma's suffering. She actually smiled and shook her head, as if my desperate attempts to reach them were merely an inconvenience to their entertainment. Racing from the conference room, I found a quiet hallway and called again. This time, Sarah picked up on the first ring, her voice artificially sweet and innocent. "Oh, hi, honey. How's your business trip going?" The casual tone made my skin crawl, especially since I could hear Emma's screams in the background. Sarah, what the hell is happening? Why is Emma tied to a tree? Why isn't she at your mother's house like you told me? My voice cracked with desperation and fury. There was a long pause before Sarah's mask slipped completely. Her voice turned cold and calculating. "She broke Frank's antique vase yesterday, Walter. The one from his grandmother that's worth $3,000. Children need to learn that actions have consequences, especially when their real parents failed to teach them proper respect. The words hit me like physical blows. Emma's real parents. Sarah had just admitted she never considered herself Emma's mother, despite 2 years of playing house and accepting my love and financial support. She's 8 years old. Take her down right now, or I'm calling the police. Sarah's laugh chilled me to the bone. Go ahead and call them. Dave is standing right here and he agrees this is appropriate family discipline. Emma has been spoiled and defiant for too long. Maybe next time she'll think twice before touching things that don't belong to her. The call ended, leaving me staring at my phone in the empty hallway while my daughter continued suffering 3 states away. I switched back to the security camera feed and watched Frank examine his watch with satisfaction. 12 minutes so far, he announced to his audience. She's got more fight than I expected, but the honey will bring more ants soon. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run even colder. This wasn't spontaneous punishment for breaking a vase. I could see old rope marks scarred into the oak tree's bark at exactly the right height for a child Emma's size. The smooth grooves in the wood told me this tree had been used as an instrument of torture before. How many times had they done this to my daughter while I was traveling for work? Emma's voice grew weaker as she called out, "Daddy, where are you? Please come home, Daddy." The desperation in her words shattered something inside my chest. I had failed to protect the most important person in my world. I had trusted these monsters with her safety, and they were systematically destroying her spirit for their own sick entertainment. But as I stood in that Chicago hallway watching my daughter suffer while a dozen adults placed bets on her endurance, I made a decision that would change everything. Emma wasn't just being punished by a cruel grandfather. She was being tortured by a coordinated conspiracy of adults who had been planning this moment. And if they thought 3 states of distance would prevent me from protecting my daughter, they were about to learn exactly what kind of father I really was. My hands shook as I dialed 911, but the response I received made my stomach drop even further. The dispatcher, a woman with a thick Southern accent, listened to my frantic description of child abuse before putting me on hold. When she returned, her tone had shifted from professional concern to dismissive bureaucracy. "Sir, I've spoken with Deputy Dave Morrison, who's currently on the scene. He reports this as appropriate family discipline for destructive behavior. Unless there's immediate life-threatening danger, we don't interfere with parental rights and family matters." Parental rights? I shouted into the phone, pacing frantically through the empty conference center hallway. That's not her parent. That's her grandfather torturing her with insects while adults place bets on how long she'll survive. The dispatcher's voice grew colder. "Sir, I understand you're upset, but Deputy Morrison has 40 years of experience distinguishing between abuse and discipline. Perhaps you should focus on teaching your daughter proper respect for other people's property when you return home." The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. Dave Morrison was Frank's brother. The entire local law enforcement system had just revealed itself as part of this conspiracy against my daughter. I realized with growing horror that they had planned this torture for a moment when I would be too far away to intervene, and they had positioned their own people to prevent any outside interference. Switching back to the security camera feed, I watched Emma's condition deteriorate rapidly. The honey had attracted what looked like hundreds of fire ants, creating moving black streams across her small body. Her breathing had become labored and wheezing, suggesting a severe allergic reaction was building in her system. But instead of showing concern, Frank pulled out his phone and began taking photographs. "Document everything," he instructed the gathered family members. "We want proof of what happens when children don't respect their elders." Sarah nodded enthusiastically and positioned herself for a selfie with Emma's suffering in the background. The casual cruelty of that moment burned itself into my memory forever. I called my daughter's school hoping someone there might intervene, but the receptionist delivered another crushing blow. "Oh, Mr. Thompson, we've been expecting your call." We received several reports this week about Emma's behavioral problems at home. Mrs. Thompson has been working with Dr. Peterson to address Emma's destructive tendencies and defiance toward authority figures. Dr. Peterson, I knew that name. Frank had mentioned him as his golf buddy, a family therapist who specialized in problem children. The pieces of this conspiracy were falling into place with terrifying clarity. They hadn't just planned this torture session. They had been systematically building a documented case against Emma's character to justify increasingly severe punishments. Racing to the nearest computer terminal in the conference center, I logged into our family's bank accounts and discovered financial betrayals that left me breathless. Over the past 6 months, Sarah had been making regular transfers to Frank's personal account. Small amounts at first, but growing larger each month. $300 in January, $500 in February, $800 in March, building to massive transfers of $2,000 each week for the past month. But the deposits were even more revealing. Frank had been receiving payments from multiple family members, all labeled as Emma management fees. Sarah's cousins, Frank's siblings, even Dave's police salary had contributed to a fund apparently designed to finance my daughter's systematic abuse. They weren't just entertainment-seeking relatives. They were paying customers for the privilege of watching my daughter suffer. Digging deeper into our financial records, I discovered that Frank had been using my personal information to open credit lines against my construction business. $20,000 in loans I never authorized, all secured against my company's equipment and property. The signature on the applications looked close enough to mine that a casual observer might accept them, but I could see subtle differences that suggested forgery. My phone rang with a call from Marcus, my neighbor, who had sent the original warning text. His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "Walter, I've been documenting what I could see from my property for weeks now, but today they moved everything to your backyard where I could capture it clearly. This isn't the first time they've done something like this to Emma." "What do you mean, not the first time?" My voice cracked with the question I was terrified to hear answered. Marcus took a deep breath before continuing. "I've seen them use your shed and tools for what they called teaching moments. 3 weeks ago, they made her stand in the hot sun for hours, holding heavy paint cans above her head. 2 weeks ago, they locked her in your storage box during a thunderstorm to cure her fear of loud noises. I called the police each time, but Dave always responded and dismissed it as family business. The shed. My own tools and property had been weaponized against my daughter while I worked 60-hour weeks to provide for our family. The storage box was barely large enough for lawn equipment, much less a terrified 8-year-old during a violent storm. The image of Emma trapped in that dark, confined space while thunder crashed overhead made me physically sick. "Why didn't you call me directly?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "I tried Walter. I called your office 12 times over the past month, but Sarah always intercepted the messages. She told your secretary that I was a troublemaking neighbor with boundary issues and asked that my calls not be forwarded to you. She said you were aware of the situation and handling it privately." Sarah had isolated Emma from any potential help by controlling the flow of information. She had positioned herself as the responsible adult, managing a difficult child while secretly coordinating the very abuse she pretended to address. The calculated nature of this betrayal cut deeper than anything I had experienced since Emma's mother died. I logged into Emma's school records and discovered another layer of deception that left me shaking with rage. Beginning 3 months ago, Sarah had been reporting Emma for increasingly serious behavioral problems. Destruction of property, defiance toward teachers, aggression toward other children, even claims that Emma had been stealing from classmates. But the timing revealed the true purpose of these false reports. Each documented incident coincided perfectly with my business travel schedule. Sarah had been creating a paper trail that painted Emma as an out-of-control child who required extreme disciplinary measures, all while ensuring I wasn't available to witness or contradict her fabricated evidence. The school counselor's notes were particularly damaging. "Emma appears to be acting out due to lack of structure and consequences at home. Father travels frequently and may be unaware of the severity of behavioral issues. Stepmother reports feeling overwhelmed and requests resources for managing defiant children. Emma wasn't defiant or out of control. She was a gentle, creative child who loved drawing pictures for me and reading books about animals. But Sarah had systematically destroyed Emma's reputation to justify the torture they were inflicting on her. They had turned my daughter's own school into an unknowing accomplice to her abuse. Looking back at the security camera feed, I watched Frank check his watch again and grin with satisfaction. 16 minutes now. I think we've got ourselves a fighter. The family members cheered and exchanged money as if Emma's endurance was somehow admirable rather than evidence of her terror-fueled adrenaline. But the sight that broke my heart completely was Emma herself. Despite everything they had done to break her spirit, she was still calling for me. "Daddy, please come home," she whispered through swollen lips. "I need you, Daddy." Her faith in me was absolute, even though I had failed to protect her from this nightmare. That's when I realized this torture session wasn't just about punishing Emma for breaking a vase. It was about breaking her faith in me. They wanted her to learn that I couldn't protect her, that her suffering would continue regardless of her pleas for help. They were systematically destroying the father-daughter bond that had sustained us both since her mother's death. Standing in that Chicago hallway watching my daughter suffer while a conspiracy of adults documented her pain for their entertainment, I understood that this was war. They had declared, war on my family, stolen my money, corrupted local authorities, and weaponized Emma's own school against her. But they had made one crucial mistake. They assumed that distance and corruption would prevent me from fighting back. They were about to learn that a father's love and determination could overcome any obstacle they placed in my path. The flight from Chicago to Birmingham couldn't come fast enough, but I was still 3 hours away from home when the security camera feed showed Emma's condition reaching a critical point. Her breathing had become dangerously labored with long pauses between each struggling breath that made my chest tighten with panic. The swelling around her eyes had progressed until she could barely open them, and the red welts covering her exposed skin were expanding into angry, raised welts that indicated severe allergic reaction. But Frank and his audience seemed energized by Emma's deteriorating condition rather than concerned. "Look at those hives developing," Frank announced with the enthusiasm of a biology teacher demonstrating an experiment. Perfect example of natural consequences in action. She'll remember this lesson for the rest of her life. Sarah had moved her chair closer to get a better view of Emma's struggle, actually leaning forward with her chin resting on her hand, like she was watching an interesting movie. "You can see her breathing getting harder," she observed with clinical detachment. "I wonder how long it takes before she passes out completely." The casual cruelty of their commentary made me realize I was witnessing something beyond simple child abuse. These people were deriving genuine entertainment from watching a child suffer, documenting her pain with the same excitement others might show for a sporting event. This wasn't punishment that had gotten out of hand. This was systematic torture designed for their psychological gratification. From my airplane seat, I opened my laptop and began accessing deeper layers of Frank's digital footprint, using investigative techniques I had learned during my military service before starting my construction business. What I discovered made the current situation seem like just the visible tip of a massive iceberg of depravity. Frank's social media accounts, which he apparently thought were private, contained photographs dating back several years showing various children in what he labeled character-building exercises. I recognized Sarah's younger cousin's neighbors from previous addresses and even children I didn't recognize who appeared to be visiting family members. Each photograph was carefully staged to show the child's distress while maintaining plausible deniability about the nature of their situation. One image from last year showed a 10-year-old boy hanging from playground equipment by his wrist while Frank stood nearby with a stopwatch. The caption read, "Teaching patience and endurance to young Marcus. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." Another showed a young girl standing in a corner holding heavy books above her head, tears streaming down her face. Cousin Jennifer learning the consequences of interrupting adult conversations. But the photographs that made my hands shake with rage were the ones featuring Emma that I had never seen before. Frank had been documenting his abuse of my daughter for months, creating a private gallery of her suffering that he shared with selected family members. Images of Emma standing in our backyard holding paint cans. Emma locked in the storage box with only her frightened eyes visible through a small gap. Emma kneeling on gravel while Frank stood over her with his arms crossed. The timestamps revealed that these torture sessions had been happening every single time I traveled for business. Frank had been using my work schedule to systematically break my daughter's spirit, and Sarah had been his willing accomplice in every session. They hadn't just hidden this abuse from me. They had specifically planned it around my absence to maximize Emma's sense of abandonment and helplessness. Scrolling through Frank's private messages, I discovered he was part of an online community that shared what they called traditional parenting techniques. The group members exchanged detailed descriptions of punishment methods, photographs of children being disciplined, and advice on avoiding legal consequences for their actions. Frank was apparently considered an expert contributor, frequently offering guidance on breaking stubborn children and teaching respect through natural consequences. One message thread from last month chilled me to my core. The Thompson situation is progressing perfectly. The girl's spirit is nearly broken, and the father remains completely unaware. We should have full control within another month. Then we can implement the permanent solution we discussed. The permanent solution. I stared at those words while my airplane climbed through turbulence, trying to understand what kind of permanent solution a group of child abusers might have planned for my daughter. The implications were too horrifying to fully process, but I forced myself to keep reading their communications. Sarah had been an active participant in these online discussions, providing detailed reports on Emma's psychological state and suggesting modifications to their torture techniques. She still calls for her father when the pain gets severe, Sarah had written. We need to increase the intensity until she learns that he can't save her. Once she accepts complete helplessness, she'll be much more manageable. Another message from Frank revealed the financial motivation behind their conspiracy. The insurance policy alone is worth $800,000 plus the construction business assets. Once we have full custody and eliminate the father, we're looking at over $2 million in total assets. The girl can be placed in long-term care where she won't be a problem anymore. They weren't just abusing Emma for their entertainment. They were systematically destroying her relationship with me as part of a plan to gain custody of her, access my life insurance money, and ultimately dispose of both of us. The broken vase had simply provided a convenient excuse to escalate their timeline. Checking our family's medical records remotely, I discovered that Emma had been taken to 3 different emergency rooms over the past 2 months for injuries that Sarah had explained as accidents. A dislocated shoulder from falling off her bike, severe bruising on her back from tumbling downstairs, burns on her hands from touching a hot stove while helping with dinner. But the medical reports included details that contradicted Sarah's explanations. The shoulder injury showed signs of being twisted deliberately rather than damaged in a fall. The bruising pattern was consistent with being struck with a flat object rather than hitting stairs. The burns were precisely shaped like the heating elements from our basement workshop, not the smooth surface of a kitchen stove. 3 different hospitals, 3 different doctors, all documenting evidence of systematic abuse, while accepting Sarah's explanations because she presented herself as a concerned stepmother dealing with a clumsy attention-seeking child. They had been torturing Emma for months while building a medical record that would support their custody case when they decided to eliminate me from the picture. The airplane's Wi-Fi allowed me to access our home's complete security system, including cameras I had installed throughout the property for protection while traveling. The basement footage revealed horrors that made me grip my seat until my knuckles went white. Frank had been using my workshop equipment to create elaborate punishment devices. My own tools purchased to build homes and create safe spaces for families had been perverted into instruments of child torture. A wooden frame designed to force children into stress positions. Modified clamps that could be adjusted to cause pain without leaving permanent marks. Even a timer system that Frank used to precisely control the duration of each torture session. But the most damaging discovery was a collection of video recordings that Frank had been making throughout his abuse of Emma. Hours of footage showing my daughter being systematically broken down through calculated cruelty, all while Frank provided commentary about proper child-rearing techniques and the importance of absolute obedience. In one recording from 3 weeks ago, I watched Frank force Emma to hold heavy paint cans above her head while he lectured her about the cost of disappointing adults. When her arms began to shake from exhaustion, he added more weight and reset his timer. "Strength comes from pushing past your limits," he explained to the camera. "This child needs to learn that her comfort is less important than her character development." Emma's voice in that recording was barely a whisper. "Please, Grandpa Frank, my arms hurt so much. I promise I'll be good. I promise I won't disappoint Daddy anymore." The broken quality of her plea revealed how completely they had convinced her that she was somehow responsible for their cruelty. Another video showed Sarah participating directly in Emma's torture, using psychological manipulation that was perhaps even more damaging than Frank's physical abuse. "Your daddy doesn't really love you," Sarah whispered while Emma was locked in the storage box during a thunderstorm. "If he cared about you, he would stay home instead of always traveling for work. He leaves you with us because he's tired of dealing with a disappointing daughter." They weren't just inflicting physical pain. They were systematically destroying Emma's sense of self-worth and her faith in my love for her. Every business trip I took to provide for our family had become ammunition. They used to convince Emma that she was unwanted and unloved. The current security feed showed Emma's condition continuing to deteriorate, while Frank's audience grew more excited. Several family members had their phones out, apparently live streaming the torture session to friends or family members who couldn't attend in person. What should have been a private moment of child abuse had become a community entertainment event. But the detail that filled me with cold determination was Frank's watch. He kept checking it and grinning, not because he was timing Emma's endurance, but because he was following a predetermined schedule. This entire torture session had been planned down to the minute, coordinated with my business travel, and designed to achieve maximum psychological damage to both Emma and our father-daughter relationship. They thought they had planned perfectly. They had corrupted local authorities, built false documentation, isolated Emma from potential help, and positioned themselves to benefit financially from our family's destruction. But they had made one critical error in their calculations. They had assumed that love could be destroyed through systematic cruelty. They believed that distance and helplessness would break the bond between a father and daughter. They were about to learn that their months of careful planning had only succeeded in awakening a protective fury that would sweep away every obstacle they had placed in my path. 20 minutes into the flight, with Emma's breathing becoming more labored and the red welts spreading across her small body, I made the first call that would begin their downfall. My attorney Jennifer Blake answered on the second ring despite the early hour. "Walter." "What's wrong? You sound terrified." Jennifer had handled my business legal issues for 5 years, but more importantly, she had guided me through the custody arrangements after Emma's mother died. She knew exactly how much my daughter meant to me. I explained the situation in rapid, urgent sentences while watching the security feed on my phone. Jennifer's responses grew increasingly outraged as I described Frank's torture methods, Sarah's betrayal, and the corruption of local authorities. "Stop talking and start recording everything," Jennifer commanded with the fierce determination that made her one of Birmingham's most feared family attorneys. "I'm filing emergency custody orders in 3 different jurisdictions right now to prevent them from moving Emma. We're also getting federal authorities involved because this conspiracy crosses state lines and involves financial crimes." Within minutes, Jennifer had contacted her network of legal professionals and initiated a coordinated response that bypassed Frank's local corruption entirely. "I'm calling Judge Patricia Williams at home," Jennifer explained while typing rapidly. "She's federal level and clean as a whistle. Frank's brother Dave has no influence in federal court." The relief of finally having a competent ally made my throat tighten with emotion. But Jennifer wasn't finished. "Walter, what you're describing isn't just child abuse. The financial manipulation, the coordinated family involvement, The systematic documentation, this looks like organized conspiracy with trafficking implications. I'm contacting the FBI field office right now. While Jennifer worked her legal network, I continued documenting every detail of Frank's digital footprint and forwarding evidence to her secure servers. The online community of child abusers, the financial records showing payments for Emma management, the medical records from multiple hospitals, everything was being compiled into an overwhelming case against the conspiracy. The insurance policy information you found changes everything, Jennifer said after reviewing the evidence I had sent. This isn't just abuse for entertainment. They're planning your murder, Walter. The permanent solution they discussed online is eliminating you to access your assets. Emma is both their victim and their pathway to financial gain. Jennifer's words hit me like ice water, but they also clarified the stakes of this battle. Emma wasn't just being tortured for their sick entertainment. She was being systematically broken down as part of a plan to murder me and steal everything I had worked to build for our family. I need to access Walter's life insurance policy and business partnership agreements, Jennifer told her assistant over a conference call. If Frank has been forging signatures on loan documents, he may have already filed paperwork to position himself as beneficiary or business partner. We need to freeze all assets immediately and document any unauthorized changes. The business partnership angle made my stomach drop as I remembered recent conversations with my partner David Chen about expanding our construction contracts. David had been unusually interested in my travel schedule and family situation, asking questions that seemed friendly at the time, but now felt like intelligence gathering for Frank's conspiracy. Jennifer's investigation confirmed my worst fears. David Chen has been in regular contact with Frank Morrison about purchasing your share of the business. They've had multiple meetings over the past month, including discussions about what would happen to your partnership if you were no longer able to participate in daily operations. See, my own business partner had been working with Frank to position himself to benefit from my death. The construction contracts I had been traveling to secure weren't just business opportunities. They were alibis that placed me far from home while Frank's conspiracy moved toward their final phase. We've got enough evidence for federal racketeering charges, Jennifer announced after consulting with FBI contacts. This conspiracy involves wire fraud, identity theft, financial crimes, child trafficking, and conspiracy to commit murder. Every family member who participated in betting on Emma's torture is now part of a federal criminal case. But even as Jennifer built our legal response, the security camera showed Emma's condition reaching a crisis point. Her breathing had become so labored that even Frank's audience was beginning to show concern. Several family members were checking their phones nervously, apparently realizing that their entertainment might cross into actual murder if Emma's allergic reaction progressed much further. She needs medical attention right now, I told Jennifer while watching Emma struggle for each breath. I don't care about building legal cases if she dies before help arrives. Jennifer's voice turned steel hard with determination. Emergency medical services are already being dispatched from the state level outside of local jurisdiction. Frank's brother can't interfere with state emergency response teams. They should arrive within 15 minutes. 15 minutes felt like an eternity while watching my daughter suffer, but I forced myself to trust Jennifer's expertise and continue building our case. The security cameras revealed details that would be crucial for prosecution, including clear footage of family members exchanging money for betting on Emma's endurance and Frank's methodical documentation of her torture. The video evidence you're capturing is admissible in federal court, Jennifer explained while coordinating with prosecutors. Every family member visible in those recordings can be charged with conspiracy, and Frank's commentary provides clear evidence of premeditation and intent to cause severe harm. But the discovery that made Jennifer's voice turn deadly serious was hidden in Frank's financial records. Walter Frank has been receiving payments from multiple sources beyond your family members. There are regular deposits from people you don't know always, in cash amounts just under federal reporting requirements. This torture network extends far beyond your family. The implications were staggering. Frank hadn't just been abusing Emma for family entertainment and financial gain. He had been operating a broader network that provided child torture as paid entertainment for other predators. Emma's suffering was being monetized through a sophisticated criminal organization that had operated undetected for years. "How many other children?" I asked, dreading the answer. Jennifer's response confirmed my worst fears. Based on the financial patterns and Frank's social media history, we're looking at potential victims across multiple states and several years of operation. Emma isn't Frank's only target, Walter. She's just his most recent project. The scope of Frank's criminal enterprise was beyond anything I had imagined, but it also provided us with powerful leverage. Federal authorities would now have massive motivation to destroy his entire network, not just rescue Emma from immediate danger. "Every piece of evidence you're gathering helps us save other children too," Jennifer reminded me as she coordinated with federal investigators. Frank's arrogance in documenting everything is going to be his downfall. He created a complete record of his crimes, thinking he was untouchable. The security feed showed state emergency vehicles approaching our neighborhood, their presence causing immediate panic among Frank's audience. Sarah jumped up from her chair and began gesturing frantically at the family members to disperse. Frank grabbed his phone and started making urgent calls, apparently trying to activate whatever corrupt contacts he thought could protect him. But the sight that gave me the first real hope since this nightmare began was Emma herself. Despite her suffering and the medical crisis threatening her life, she had heard the approaching sirens and was trying to call out for help. Her voice was weak and rasping, but she was still fighting. My daughter's incredible courage in the face of systematic torture filled me with determination to match her strength. "The cavalry is arriving," Jennifer announced with satisfaction. "Federal agents, state medical teams, and child protective services are all converging on your property simultaneously." Frank's local protection just became irrelevant. But even as help approached, I knew our legal victory was just the beginning of Emma's recovery process. Months of systematic torture had damaged more than her body. The psychological wounds would require careful healing, and rebuilding her faith in safety and love would take time and patience. "We're going to destroy everyone involved in this conspiracy," Jennifer promised as emergency vehicles surrounded our property. "But more importantly, we're going to make sure Emma knows she's completely safe and absolutely loved. That's the real victory, Walter. Everything else is just paperwork." As state emergency vehicles surrounded our property and Frank's audience scattered in panic, I made the second call that would ensure this conspiracy faced consequences they would never forget. Jackson Morrison, known to his military brothers as Tank, answered his phone with the crisp efficiency of a man accustomed to crisis situations. "Walter, what do you need?" Tank's voice carried the absolute reliability that had made him my closest friend during our Army service together. After discharge, he had built a private security firm specializing in executive protection and complex threat elimination. I outlined the situation in tactical terms that Tank would understand immediately. Child hostage situation. Multiple hostile adults. Corrupt local authorities. Imminent threat to target's life. Federal response already initiated but insufficient for complete threat neutralization. "How many operatives do you need on site?" Tank asked, already shifting into mission planning mode. "All of them," I replied without hesitation. "This isn't just about Emma anymore. Frank's running a child trafficking network with federal implications. I need overwhelming force to ensure nobody escapes and all evidence is preserved." Tank's response was exactly what I expected from a man who had never failed a mission. "My team is airborne in 20 minutes. We'll coordinate with federal response teams already en route. Full tactical support with advanced surveillance equipment. Nobody involved in harming your daughter walks away from this." Within 35 minutes, Tank's private security team had established a complete perimeter around our neighborhood, using military-grade equipment to monitor all communications and movement in the area. Their presence transformed the situation from a local family dispute into a federal operation with professional oversight. The security cameras showed Frank's panic as he realized his situation had escalated far beyond anything his corrupt local contacts could handle. Professional operators in tactical gear were positioning surveillance equipment that could capture evidence from distances and angles that would make denial impossible. But Tank's team discovered evidence that made the current torture session seem minor compared to Frank's broader criminal enterprise. Advanced surveillance equipment revealed a sophisticated drug manufacturing operation hidden in our basement, using my property as a front for distributing narcotics throughout the region. Your basement has been converted into a methamphetamine production facility, Tank reported through encrypted communications. Frank's been using your construction business as cover for transporting materials and finished product across state lines. The child abuse was just one component of a major criminal organization. The revelation explained why Frank had been so confident about corrupting local authorities and manipulating legal systems. His drug operation provided financial resources to purchase protection from corrupt officials, while his child trafficking network provided blackmail material to ensure their continued cooperation. Tank's digital forensics specialist had penetrated Frank's communications networks and discovered the true scope of his criminal empire. He's been live-streaming child torture sessions to paying customers internationally, Tank explained with barely controlled rage. Emma's suffering today was being broadcast to predators across multiple continents. This is federal trafficking with international implications. The live-streaming revelation made my vision narrow with fury. Emma's torture hadn't just been entertainment for a dozen family members. It had been a paid performance for international predators who were watching my daughter's agony in real time. Frank had monetized her suffering on a global scale. "How much evidence do you have?" I asked, knowing that Tank's team would be thorough in their documentation. Complete Communications intercepts financial transaction records, customer databases, and streaming archives going back 18 months, Tank replied with professional satisfaction. Frank kept detailed records of everything because he thought his protection was absolute. We have evidence that will destroy his entire network and everyone connected to it. But Tank's most important discovery was tactical intelligence about Frank's immediate plans. He's been coordinating with associates to eliminate witnesses and destroy evidence. Emma wasn't just being tortured for entertainment today, Walter. This was supposed to be her final session before they implemented their permanent solution. The permanent solution was going to happen today. Frank hadn't planned this torture session as punishment for breaking a vase. He had planned it as Emma's execution, designed to look like an accidental death from allergic reaction, while I was conveniently 3 states away with a perfect alibi. "We're moving to active intervention," Tank announced as his team repositioned around our property. Target's life is in immediate danger, and suspects are preparing to eliminate evidence. Federal teams have authorization to use all necessary force to preserve the victim and secure evidence. Through the security cameras, I watched Frank realize that escape was no longer possible. Professional operatives had surrounded the property. Federal vehicles were approaching from multiple directions, and advanced surveillance equipment was documenting every movement and conversation. His months of careful planning were collapsing in real time. Sarah's panic was even more satisfying to watch. She kept trying to call someone for help, but Tank's communication intercepts revealed that every corrupt contact in Frank's network was either already under federal surveillance or actively fleeing to avoid prosecution. The protection they had purchased through drug money and blackmail material had evaporated the moment federal authorities became involved. Frank's business partner just tried to flee the state, Tank reported with grim amusement. Interstate flight from federal investigators. He'll be arrested at the airport within 30 minutes. Your business partnership agreement is already being secured as the evidence in the racketeering case. David Chen's betrayal stung, but watching him face federal prosecution for conspiracy to commit murder provided considerable satisfaction. His greed had led him to participate in planning my death and Emma's torture, and federal prison would give him plenty of time to reconsider those choices. Tank's medical team reached Emma before state emergency services, providing immediate treatment for her allergic reaction while simultaneously documenting every injury for evidence. She's stable but severely traumatized, Tank reported. Medical flight to Birmingham Children's Hospital is already arranged. She'll receive the best possible care while we finish cleaning up this situation. The relief of knowing Emma was finally safe and receiving professional medical care made my legs weak with emotional release. But Tank wasn't finished with his mission. Walter, we found evidence that Frank has been planning to eliminate you for months. He purchased materials for making your death look like an industrial accident at one of your construction sites. Your travel schedule, equipment locations, safety protocols, everything has been compromised by your business partner's cooperation. Frank hadn't just planned to torture Emma to death. He had developed a complete strategy for murdering me in a way that would appear accidental, allowing him and Sarah to inherit my assets while eliminating any witnesses to their crimes. They had been planning a double homicide disguised as unrelated accidents. Every family member who participated in today's torture session is being arrested simultaneously. Tank continued with professional efficiency. Federal agents are executing coordinated arrests across multiple locations. Nobody escapes and all evidence is preserved for prosecution. Through Tank's surveillance network, I watched federal agents arrest Sarah's mother, Frank's siblings, and every relative who had participated in betting on Emma's suffering. Their entertainment had become the evidence that would send them to federal prison for child trafficking conspiracy. But Tank's final report provided the ultimate satisfaction. Frank's online predator network included judges, politicians, and law enforcement officials across 6 states. The evidence we captured today is going to bring down an entire corruption network. Emma's rescue is just the beginning of the justice she's going to receive. Frank's arrogance in documenting everything had created a complete record of his criminal empire. Every victim he had tortured, every official he had corrupted, every financial transaction he had hidden, all of it was now evidence in federal hands. Emma's suffering would ultimately lead to justice for dozens of other children and the destruction of a criminal network that had operated with impunity for years. Your daughter is safe, Walter. Tank concluded as his team completed their mission. But more importantly, she's about to see every person who hurt her face complete justice. That kind of closure is going to be crucial for her psychological recovery. Federal agents swarmed our property like a precision military operation, each team executing specialized tasks that demonstrated months of careful planning. FBI financial crimes specialists secured Frank's drug operation in our basement, while digital forensics experts preserved the servers he had used for live streaming child torture to international predators. The coordination was flawless, suggesting that Frank's criminal network had been under federal investigation long before Emma's torture session provided the final evidence needed for massive arrests. Agent Sarah Rodriguez, the federal task force commander, established a mobile command center in our driveway and began coordinating simultaneous raids across 6 states. We've been tracking Frank Morrison's trafficking network for 18 months, she explained through Tank's secure communications. Today's evidence gave us probable cause to arrest 47 individuals simultaneously. The scope of the operation was staggering. Federal agents were executing arrests in Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, and South Carolina, targeting every member of Frank's predator network, along with the corrupt officials who had provided protection. Emma's rescue had become the catalyst for destroying an entire criminal organization. Frank himself was the first arrested, his hands zip-tied behind his back while federal agents read charges that included conspiracy to commit murder, child trafficking, drug distribution, wire fraud, and racketeering. His arrogant confidence had completely dissolved, replaced by the terrified realization that his months of planning had led directly to his own destruction. Frank Morrison, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, child trafficking across state lines, distribution of controlled substances, wire fraud, identity theft, and operating a continuing criminal enterprise, Agent Rodriguez announced while Frank was loaded into a federal transport vehicle. You have the right to remain silent, and I strongly recommend you use it. Sarah's arrest was equally satisfying to watch through Tank's surveillance feed. She had tried to flee through our backyard but ran directly into a perimeter team that had anticipated every possible escape route. Her attempts to claim innocence and blame Frank for everything were ignored by agents who had monitored her online communications and financial transactions for months. The family members who had been betting on Emma's endurance were arrested, one by one, their shock and protest revealing how completely they had underestimated the consequences of their entertainment. Sarah's mother, Janet, tried to claim she was just visiting and hadn't participated in the abuse, but digital evidence showed her making online payments to Frank's Emma Management Fund for months. Frank's brother Dave, the corrupt sheriff's deputy, was arrested at his home by state investigators who had coordinated with federal teams. His 40 years of law enforcement experience hadn't prepared him for facing prosecution by authorities who couldn't be bribed or intimidated. Internal affairs investigators had been building a case against him for weeks, using his dismissive responses to reports about Emma as evidence of corruption and conspiracy. But the arrest that provided the greatest emotional satisfaction was David Chen, my former business partner. Federal agents intercepted him at Birmingham International Airport with a suitcase full of cash and documents related to liquidating construction business assets. His panicked attempts to claim he was just taking a vacation fell apart when investigators revealed recorded conversations about eliminating me to gain control of our partnership. David Chen, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering, announced the federal agent who had been tracking him. Your recorded conversations about eliminating your business partner constitute clear evidence of premeditated murder conspiracy. The financial investigation revealed the full scope of Frank's criminal empire. His drug operation had been generating over $2 million annually, while his child trafficking network provided both additional income and blackmail material for corrupting officials. The torture equipment in my basement was just one location in a network of facilities across multiple states. We found evidence of systematic torture at 7 different locations, Agent Rodriguez reported as the investigation expanded. Frank's network has been operating for at least 5 years with dozens of child victims and hundreds of hours of recorded abuse being sold to international predators. Emma's torture session had been broadcast to customers in 12 different countries, generating over $50,000 in revenue for Frank's network. The global scope of his crimes ensured that federal prosecutors would pursue maximum sentences for everyone involved with enhanced penalties for international trafficking. The corrupt officials in Frank's network were arrested throughout the day as digital evidence revealed the extent of their participation. Judge Harold Peterson, who had been preparing to grant Frank custody of Emma, was arrested for accepting bribes and participating in child trafficking conspiracy. Dr. Robert Peterson, the family therapist who had documented Emma's fabricated behavioral problems, was charged with falsifying medical records and conspiracy to commit child abuse. Every official who touched Emma's case had been corrupted by Frank's network, Agent Rodriguez explained as the arrests continued. They weren't just failing to protect her. They were actively participating in her planned murder. The evidence recovered from Frank's digital devices was overwhelming. Over 10,000 photographs and videos of children being tortured detailed financial records of payments from international customers' communications with corrupt officials discussing case manipulation and specific plans for murdering me and eliminating Emma as a witness. Frank documented everything because he believed his protection was absolute, Agent Rodriguez observed as forensics teams processed terabytes of evidence. His arrogance created a complete record of his criminal organization that will ensure maximum prosecutions for everyone involved. But the discovery that made me shake with retroactive terror was Frank's timeline for implementing his permanent solution. Emma's torture session today was supposed to conclude with her death from allergic reaction, followed by my murder disguised as an industrial accident within the next week. Sarah would then inherit my assets and disappear with Frank to continue their operations in another state. You and Emma were scheduled to be eliminated within 7 days, Agent Rodriguez revealed as investigators reconstructed Frank's plans. Your business trip provided perfect alibi timing for both murders. If your neighbor hadn't alerted you today, Frank's plan would have proceeded exactly as designed. Marcus, the neighbor who had saved Emma's life by sending that crucial text message, was interviewed by federal agents and revealed months of suspicious activity he had documented. His military training had made him recognize the systematic nature of Emma's abuse, but Frank's corruption of local authorities had prevented effective intervention until federal investigators became involved. Marcus provided crucial intelligence that helped us establish the pattern of abuse, Agent Rodriguez acknowledged. His documentation of Frank's activities provided timeline evidence that proved premeditation and conspiracy. The medical examination of Emma at Birmingham Children's Hospital revealed injuries consistent with months of systematic torture, healed fractures, scar patterns from restraints, chemical burns from basement experiments, and psychological trauma indicators that documented the complete scope of Frank's abuse. Emma's medical records will provide crucial evidence for prosecution. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, her treating physician, reported to federal investigators. The injury patterns clearly show systematic repeated abuse designed to inflict maximum psychological damage while avoiding detection. But Emma's incredible resilience was already showing through her medical recovery. Despite everything Frank had done to break her spirit, she was asking about me and expressing concern for other children who might be suffering similar abuse. Her courage in the face of systematic torture provided hope for complete psychological recovery. The financial investigation revealed that Frank's network had stolen over $800,000 from my accounts and business, using forged documents and corrupted officials to legitimize their theft. Federal asset recovery specialists began the process of returning stolen funds while ensuring all evidence was preserved for prosecution. Frank's financial crimes alone carry sentences of 25 to 30 years, Agent Rodriguez explained as the investigation continued. Combined with child trafficking conspiracy to commit murder and racketeering charges, he's facing multiple life sentences without possibility of parole. Sarah's cooperation in exchange for reduced sentencing revealed additional details about Frank's network that led to more arrests and victim identification. Her desperate attempts to minimize her own culpability provided investigators with evidence about other children who had been tortured and families who had been targeted for elimination. Sarah's confession is leading us to other victims and crime scenes, Agent Rodriguez reported as the investigation expanded. Frank's network was much larger than we initially realized, with potential victims across multiple states and several years of operation. The international investigation was revealing connections to trafficking networks in Europe and Asia, suggesting that Frank's operation was part of a global criminal organization that specialized in providing child torture content to wealthy predators worldwide. Emma's rescue was contributing to investigations that would ultimately save children across multiple continents. By evening, 47 arrests had been completed across 6 states, with additional arrests pending as the investigation expanded internationally. Frank's arrogance in documenting everything had provided federal prosecutors with evidence for cases that would dominate headlines for months and result in sentences that would keep every participant in prison for the rest of their lives. Emma was safe. Frank's entire network was destroyed, and justice was being served on a scale that matched the scope of their crimes. But most importantly, Emma would grow up knowing that every person who had hurt her faced complete consequences for their actions, providing the foundation for psychological healing and renewed faith in justice and protection. 6 months after that horrific day when Emma was tied to our oak tree, she was sitting in her new art therapy studio, carefully painting a picture of butterflies emerging from a garden. The transformation was remarkable. The terrified 8-year-old who had called desperately for her daddy while covered in honey and ant bites had become a confident 9-year-old who spoke openly about her experiences and helped other children understand that survival was possible. We had moved to Asheville, North Carolina, where the mountains provided both distance from our traumatic memories and access to some of the country's best child trauma specialists. Emma's new school specialized in helping children recover from severe abuse, and her teachers were amazed by her resilience and determination to help other students who were struggling with their own healing journeys. "I want to tell other kids that their daddies really do love them," Emma explained to her therapist, Dr. Carol Matthews, during one of their sessions that I was privileged to observe. Some kids think their parents don't care because bad people told them lies. But love is stronger than lies, and good people will always come to help if you keep believing. Emma's wisdom, born from surviving systematic torture, was helping other children find hope in their darkest moments. Her art therapy paintings were being displayed in galleries across the state to raise awareness about child trafficking, with proceeds supporting organizations that rescue and rehabilitate other survivors. Frank was serving multiple life sentences without possibility of parole in a federal maximum security prison. His criminal network had been completely destroyed, resulting in the rescue of 37 children from trafficking situations and the prosecution of over 100 individuals across 12 countries. The evidence Emma's case provided had become the foundation for international law enforcement cooperation that was saving children worldwide. Sarah received 25 years in federal prison after her cooperation helped convict the broader trafficking network. Her testimony revealed the psychological manipulation techniques that predators use to isolate children from their protective relationships, information that was being used to train law enforcement officers and social workers to better identify abuse situations. The corrupt officials who had enabled Frank's network faced their own consequences. Judge Harold Peterson was sentenced to 15 years for accepting bribes and conspiracy to commit child abuse. Dr. Robert Peterson lost his license and received 10 years for falsifying medical records. Deputy Dave Morrison was sentenced to 12 years and banned from ever working in law enforcement again. David Chen, my former business partner, received 18 years for conspiracy to commit murder and financial fraud. The construction business he had tried to steal was thriving under new management, with contracts specifically focused on building safe houses and therapy centers for trafficking survivors. Marcus had moved to North Carolina to be closer to us, becoming the grandfather figure Emma had never safely experienced. His military background and protective instincts made him the perfect guardian when I occasionally needed to travel for business, though Emma's security was now managed by Tank's professional team to ensure absolute safety. Tank Morrison had become like an uncle to Emma, teaching her age-appropriate self-defense techniques and confidence-building exercises that helped her feel empowered rather than vulnerable. His security firm now specialized in protecting trafficking survivors and their families, using Emma's case as a model for rapid response and evidence preservation. Emma has become one of our most valuable consultants, Tank explained during one of our family dinners. Her insights about how predators manipulate children have helped us develop better protection protocols for other families. She's turning her survival into service for other kids. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who had treated Emma's medical trauma, remained involved in her ongoing care and was amazed by her psychological recovery. Emma's case has become a textbook example of how children can heal from severe trauma when they receive appropriate support and see justice served, she observed during a follow-up examination. The financial recovery had been complete, with federal investigators returning all stolen funds plus additional compensation from asset seizures of Frank's criminal network. Emma's college fund was as fully secured, and our family's financial stability was stronger than ever. But the most important recovery was Emma's faith in love and protection. She understood that evil people had tried to break her spirit and destroy our relationship, but she also learned that love combined with determination could overcome any obstacle. Her nightmares had ended months ago, replaced by dreams about helping other children and building a safer world. "I'm not afraid anymore," Daddy Arima told me one evening as we watched the sunset over the mountains. "Bad people taught me that I'm stronger than I thought I was. And you taught me that good people will always fight to protect children. I want to be one of the good people who fights to help kids." Emma's determination to transform her survival into service for others had become the driving force of her recovery. She volunteered with organizations that educated children about recognizing grooming and manipulation techniques. Her artwork raised funds for therapy programs. Her testimony to law enforcement helped identify other trafficking situations. "The best revenge against people who try to break children is growing up to be someone who protects children," Emma explained with wisdom that should have been far beyond her years. "Frank wanted to make me weak and scared, but I decided to become strong and helpful instead." Our new home had become a sanctuary where other trafficking survivors could visit and see that complete healing was possible. Emma's recovery inspired other children to believe in their own strength and potential for happiness. The oak tree that had been an instrument of torture in Alabama had been replaced by a garden where children could plant flowers and watch beautiful things grow from ground that had once known only pain. The legal proceedings continued with international implications as Frank's network had connections to trafficking operations across multiple continents. Emma's case had become the foundation for new international protocols for investigating and prosecuting child trafficking networks, ensuring that her suffering would contribute to protecting countless other children worldwide. Jennifer Blake, our attorney who had initiated Emma's rescue, had become a family friend and continued working on cases involving trafficking survivors. Emma's strength in testifying helped prosecutors secure convictions that will protect other children for decades, Jennifer observed with pride. Her courage in speaking truth to power has had international impact. The neighbor Marcus, who had sent that crucial text message alerting me to Emma's torture, received a civilian award for heroism from the FBI. His recognition ceremony included Emma presenting him with one of her paintings as thanks for saving her life. The painting showed a guardian angel watching over sleeping children with the words, "Heroes come in all forms," written in Emma's careful handwriting. Emma's school counselor noted that she had become a natural leader among students who were recovering from trauma. Emma has an incredible ability to help other children understand that their experiences don't define their worth, the counselor observed. She shows them that survival can become strength and pain can become purpose. Our family traditions had been rebuilt around safety, love, and service to others. Emma's birthday parties included fundraising activities for child protection organizations. Our holidays involved volunteering at shelters and safe houses. Every family milestone was connected to helping other families escape from dangerous situations. I used to be scared that bad people were stronger than good people, Emma reflected during one of our conversations about her recovery journey. But I learned that love makes good people stronger than anything bad people can do. And when good people work together, they can save everyone. The transformation in Emma's perspective from victim to advocate had become the foundation of her identity. She understood that evil people had targeted her because they thought she was vulnerable and alone. But she had learned that love, determination, and community could overcome any form of cruelty or corruption. As we sat together in our mountain home watching Emma work on a new painting that would be displayed at an international conference on child trafficking prevention, I realized that Frank's systematic torture had accomplished the exact opposite of his intentions. Instead of breaking Emma's spirit, it had revealed her incredible strength. Instead of destroying our father-daughter bond, it had made our love unshakable. Instead of winning through cruelty, his evil had been defeated by the power of good people working together to protect children. "What do you want people to learn from your story?" I asked Emma as she added final details to her latest artwork. Emma looked up from her painting with eyes that held wisdom earned through surviving horrors no child should ever face. "I want them to learn that children are stronger than bad people think we are. And I want them to learn that good people will always come to help if you keep calling for them. But mostly I want them to learn that love wins in the end, even when everything seems impossible." Emma's story had become a beacon of hope for trafficking survivors worldwide. Her journey from victim to advocate demonstrated that the human spirit could not be broken by systematic cruelty when supported by love, justice, and community. The little girl who had called desperately for her daddy while tied to a tree had grown into a young person who was saving other children through her courage, wisdom, and determination to transform suffering into service. Our new life in the mountains was filled with peace, purpose, and the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing that evil had been completely defeated by love. Emma was safe. Frank's entire network was destroyed, and other children worldwide were being protected because of the evidence our case had provided. Justice had been served, healing was complete, and our family's love had proven stronger than any force that had tried to destroy it. Have you ever had to make difficult calls to protect someone you love? What would you do if corruption seemed to block every path to justice? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and please like this story. If Emma's courage inspired you to believe that love can overcome any obstacle, subscribe for more stories about ordinary people finding extraordinary strength in impossible situations, and share this with anyone who needs to know that good people will always fight to protect children. Thank you for joining Emma and me on this journey from darkness to light, and remember that your voice and actions can make the difference between despair and hope for someone who desperately needs a hero. May you always have the courage to make the calls that protect the innocent, and may you never doubt that love, determination, and justice working together can overcome any evil that threatens the people we cherish most.